Okay, it's been a while since we've had a chat, Gareth. First thing, you must obviously be very disappointed about the game being called off Saturday.
Yeah, it's frustrating that it was called off because of the reason it was called off. Obviously, Luctonians having to travel all the way from Hereford, means it's having to set off obviously several hours beforehand, and with the weather being as bad as it was down there, a lot of their players couldn't even get to the ground to get on the bus. So, it's frustrating because we were good to go. The ground was fine. Even though we'd had a bit of bad weather, we had obviously a full house booked in for lunch. So from that point of view, it's frustrating. But there's not a lot you can do about it, and safety has to be paramount.
Yeah. Now we're playing through till I think the second weekend in May. The playoff was scheduled for the first weekend. That has now been put back to when we don't know. Does this perhaps suggest we're playing too many games?
Well, the argument has been there, and it's certainly one that came up last weekend. The big point that was made to me last week was that if we were playing on a more regional basis, we perhaps could have ensured that a game went ahead last Saturday. We've had one or two problems. Obviously, Westow a few weeks before that, where they couldn't get down because of transport problems. But the weather sometimes you can't really do a lot about. If it's bad weather, then it's bad weather. But I suppose if the team's only travelling within an hour, 2 hours, absolute maximum, you can put kick-offs back, or you can certainly plan a lot better. But obviously, when teams are setting off at breakfast time to get here, it does raise questions, and I think there's probably one or two arguments that need to be had about how sustainable it is in its current format. Obviously, there's not a great travelling support, particularly from teams coming up from the Midlands to the north, and probably vice versa. And I think the number of games that we're playing, it's starting to tell. We can't keep going on till the middle end of May, and perhaps we need to revert back to perhaps a 14-team league. And see what that takes us, because the winters do seem to be getting worse. Okay.
The two games that you've mentioned in the Westow game and Saturday's game against the Luctonians, they've been put back provisionally till May. In previous seasons, those games, if there was nothing riding on them, they'd be declared dead rubbers, no points, because it didn't affect outcomes. What's the latest we've got with that?
Well, our view is that we will play those games. Our understanding of the rules are that the two teams involved have to agree to call those games off. Both games were called off for reasons that were out of our control. As I say, Westow for travel problems, and Luctonians because of the weather in their part of the world. But we had sponsors for both of those games. We had large numbers booked in for lunch, and as it stands, those sponsors are keen to re-sponsor the games later in the year. So from our point of view, those games will go ahead, and it's very important for us as a club that they do.
Excellent. On perhaps a brighter note, looking forward to firstly Caldy this Saturday, and beyond that our old friends Fylde on the Monday too, as you've been talking about more local games. Hopefully the supporters will be in force for both of those. What are your thoughts on this weekend's games?
Well, I think they're two very good games. I think they're two good games for the supporters to get along to. Games with Caldy are always tense affairs, usually pretty close and well contested. We've got a supporters coach going on Saturday, so we always take a good support to Caldy. So again, perhaps that gives some weight to the argument about perhaps playing on a more localised basis. But Caldy will be a good test. It's a tough place to go. We've done reasonably well there in recent years, so hopefully we can continue in that vein. And then Monday, well, it's local derby. It's one that will really whet the appetite. Again, it's difficult to call at this point because we don't really know, I suppose, what team we'll take on Monday. We'll try and take the strongest team we can, but a lot of it depends on what we pick up in terms of bumps and bruises on Saturday. But obviously it's a cup semi-final. We're reigning holders, and we want to go there and give a good account of ourselves. I was on the radio with Martin Nelson last night, and I think he's in a similar boat in terms of Fyle's prep for the game. But both teams, both clubs will certainly give it their all.
And as for the Lancashire Cup itself, the format's changed over the years. We're currently down to an 8-team format, of which again this year there's been walkovers at the initial stage. Is there discussions ongoing regarding the future format of the Lancashire Cup?
I think there's been lots of discussions in recent years as to what is the best format. I think the problem you've got is that if you played in pre-season, a lot of the junior clubs or the clubs perhaps at levels 5 and 6, They perhaps have, issues in pre-season. They don't tend to have the strongest teams available then, so they're not keen, if they get drawn against perhaps one of the National League clubs, to play those fixtures. And as you get towards the end of the season, if teams are involved in, playoffs or promotion or relegation bids, they don't really want to be, risking players at those times of the season for the cup. So it's a difficult one. It's difficult because there's only probably 3 or 4 teams taking it seriously at the moment, and that only really lends itself to semi-finals and finals. So it's a tricky one. I've had a lot of ideas put to me as to how it could work, but none of them really seem to fit for all clubs at the moment. So hopefully Monday will show it in its right light, and obviously there'll be a good final to be had after that for whoever gets through.